All right, up to now we've seen different ways that we can create our arrays or lists, as Python calls them. And we've seen ways that we can add elements to our arrays or lists. So what we're going to do now in this example is see how we can just access an individual item out of that list. Random access it's called, where I just want to grab maybe this value or just randomly choose some value. So that's what I'm going to do today in this video, is randomly choose a value out of our list. And so again, remember when we use the random, we're going to import random. So now I have access to a random number generator or to a random generator. And there's two different ways that we can do this, but I'm going to show you I'll show you both ways. All right, so this should look familiar now. We have our list, which has a list of strings in it. And what I'd like to do is we're going to generate a random number. And in order to generate a random number, let's remember what the context, let's just work on that for a minute. Random number, this is sort of a review. I can use random.randint, for example. And if I look at my little hints here, it says that return a random integer in the range A to B, including both endpoints. So that's key here, including both endpoints. So if I put 1, 5, it'll create a random number between 1 and 5, including 5. And so I have to keep that in mind when I'm considering that I really need a number between 0 and whatever this endpoint is. And the reason why I need 0 is because if I want to get at this item, I need to have an array list of 0. In other words, I'm trying to choose a random number between 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that I can access randomly one of these elements. And remember, in order to access cherries, for example, I will need a random number of 0 so that I can get to array list of 0. And then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is my highest number. So I need to generate a random number between 0 and 5 in order to get one of these elements randomly. Okay? So that idea in mind, we could do this way. So I could say print parenthesis array list of, remember I need to get at my elements, I'm going to use the bracket. So to get at the random number, I'm going to put in the random variable. And so what this should be doing is generating a random value. Let's just see what happens, and then we'll dissect it a little bit more. It does work. Okay, so what we're doing is, let me print out print random number so we can see it a little bit more clearly. Okay, so let's evaluate what's happening here. I'm going to run it again. And we've got two prints. We've got one is a 4. So what's happening is we're generating a random integer between 0 and 5. In this case, a 4 was generated. And so if we look at our array list of element, remember those brackets mean I need to get at a particular element in that array. And the random number is 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is printing out bars. Let's learn that run more time and watch that happen again. This time the random number was 1. So array list, I mean, this is synonymous with putting in 1 here, right? So array list of 1, 0, 1 is in fact plums. So let me put that back to where it was. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you see what's going on there. All right, so we're generating a number between 0 and 5. Remember I said in another video, though, that we try very hard not to hard code or make a particular number, that we'd like it to be a variable in case our array list changes. In other words, if I added on strawberries, for example, now strawberries would never be chosen because we're generating a number between 0 and 5. So I could bring this down so you can see it. You can do this on multiple lines as long as this line ends in a comma. So this is valid, this should still work, but this way we can see it on our screen. Okay, so the point here was that strawberries will never be chosen because we've hard-coded in the 5, we're not flexible to change. And so if you recall, we talked about the fact that we can use the length. So let's do array length is equal to, and we used len, L-E-N for length, and array list. Okay, and so let's just print out, just for our own visual, let's print the array length so we can see that that's actually working. So I'm going to run, and it says the array length is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so the important thing to get here is that the array length is 7, but the highest element number is 6. Remember, because the elements start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our highest element is array list. Let me just write that down so it's clear. Array list of 6 gets to strawberries. So our highest element number is 6, but our length is 7. And why am I making such a big deal about this? I'll show you. Because, now I'm going to comment my length here so we're not seeing it. If my array length is 7, and I want to generate a random number between 1 and 6, then I have a problem here. I can't have this be, I'd like to just put in array length and have it generate a random number that's based on the length of my array. So if I add more elements to it, this will automatically just flow. It'll just work because it's getting the length of the array. But because the array length is 7, this is not going to work because 7 would generate an error. It's array length of, array list of element 7 is non-existent. So I'd get that index out of range error that we saw in another video. And so what I can do here is, if I subtract 1, then my highest number will be 6. It'll always be one number less than the number of elements. So my length is 7, but because I need to start at 0, I can subtract 1. So now array length will always be one number less than the number of elements, which coincides to the fact that I need one number less to get to the highest element number. Does that make sense? So in other words, my array length now is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because I have 7 elements. But because I've subtracted 1, the highest random number that will be selected here will be 6, which is the highest element number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the highest number I'm ever going to be able to get then, I'm just going to type it out so you can see it, is array list element number 6. Hopefully that makes sense. So now I can do the same thing I did before, except I can be flexible because I'm using the length property instead of hard coding in that number. So let's see that run and make sure I don't have any errors. 0 was selected, which is cherries. Let's run it again. This time 4 was selected, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is correct. Let's try one more run. And this time we got plums. So that's one way that you can access randomly individual values. Okay, let's see another way. How about if I'm going to comment all this out just so we can start kind of from scratch here. I'll leave it on there for you to see. Okay, so another way you can do it, and granted this way might seem simpler, but it was very important for me that you see how we can access these through using these brackets, because that's used in quite a number of different languages. Python is a little unique, and it gives us kind of a shortcut way that we can do the same thing, and I will show you that shortcut way. All right, so this time I'm going to choose, just for a variety, the word random fruit. and I'm going to type in random. This time, instead of doing rand int, I'm going to do the word choice. And choice, see how this SEQ is trying to give me a clue of what to go in here? And it says choose a random element from a non-empty sequence. So sequence is another term for a series of values. We have a series of values here in our list, so Python calls it a sequence. And so if we put a sequence, which in our case is this list, then the suggestion is it's going to choose a random element from that sequence. So in other words, instead of having to go through the index number that we did on this example above, it's just going to pull out an element for us. Really, that simply? Yep. You made us go through all that hard stuff to get to something simpler? Yeah, because I think it's important that you see how both sides work, because this part is kind of unique to Python. And I'm trying to set you up for other languages that would do things more this way. All right, so let's see if this one works. Run that, and it chose pineapple. Run it again, and it chose plums. So both doing the same thing, but don't lean on this as your only option. Try to get your hands around how this is working, because that will build you up a strong foundation for the way things are done in other languages. All right, so that is a way to randomly get at different elements in our list.